This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So, we're getting some background noise. Divya, can you mute your microphone?
Okay, Ram.
So, yesterday I told you the importance of database. I told what are we going to learn as part of the database. I also told you what is the client server architecture, correct? I told all these things yesterday.
Yes, Ramji.
So
Yes.
today we are going to start the classes regarding database. So when you install Oracle database in your laptop, when you install Oracle database in your laptop, by default you will get SQL plus client along with the installation. Yesterday I told about SQL plus client and SQL developer client, correct?
Yes.
Yes, Ramji.
When you install Oracle database in your laptops, by default, along with the installation of Oracle database, along with the installation of the Oracle database server, the SQL Plus client is also installed along with the installation. You need not install the client separately. You need not install the client separately. Along with the server installation, client is also installed automatically. Which client? SQL Plus client, not the SQL developer client. If you want to install the SQL developer client, you have to install it separately. You don't get it by default. Okay. So when you are installing the Oracle database server, in your laptops, along with the installation, you will also get the SQL Plus client automatically. Any questions here?
No, Ramji.
No.
So just type SQL Plus. So after you install the Oracle database, you should be able to see this, because I told that along with the installation, you'll get this client, correct? So why do I need a client? I need a client to interact with the server. Agreed?
Yes, Ramji.
If I want to send a request to the server means what? Database. Database is
Database.
server. Correct? This is what we learned yesterday. Database is a server. So we are making request to the server from the client. Agreed?
Yes.
So now, after you install the Oracle database, you should be able to see the SQL Plus. So just open that. You see this kind of window. When you click on SQL Plus, you see this particular kind of window. You have to enter the username and password. Okay. So yesterday I told you that. If client wants to speak with the database, if client wants to speak with the database, it has to know the IP address of the database, correct? It
Yes,
has to
Ramji.
know the port number of the database. It has to know the username of the database. It has to know the password of the database. So by using these details, you can connect to database. Agreed?
Yes, Ramji.
Yeah.
You can connect to database. Did everyone remember this or not?
Yes.
Yes.
So now I am entering the username system 123 is invalid username. So let me enter Java 2019. One second. Yes. So how do you know the username and password to connect to the database? How do you know the username and password to connect to the database? So when you are installing the database, it will ask you during that installation process. It will ask you what username and password you want to give. Getting it? It will ask you what username and password you want to give. So please follow my instructions in the recording. whatever the recording I sent for the installation, please follow my instructions and use the same username and password. Whatever the username and password I used in the recording, so please use the same username and password so that there will be no confusions. Tomorrow, if you are not able to connect to the database, so I can see what is the problem. But if you use a different username and password and if you forget that, I can't help you, correct?
Yes, Ramji.
So during the installation process, when you are installing the database in the laptops, so please follow my instructions and use the username and password that I specified in the recording. And remember that username and password, okay? Okay.
Yes, Ramji.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I know the username and password. And where is my database server installed? It is installed in the same laptop where the client is installed. Both client and server are there in the same laptop, correct?
Yes.
And how does this client installed? When the database is during the process of database installation, client is also installed, correct?
Yes.
In the process of server installation, client is also installed automatically. I did not install it separately. Agreed?
Yes.
So the client knows where the server is located because as part of the same installation, the client is also installed. The client already knows where the server is present. You need not specify the IP address again. You need not specify the port number again because the client already knows where the server is installed because the client and server are installed in the same installation, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, Ramji.
Somehow the SQL Plus client already knows the IP address of the database server, the port number of the database server. You need not specify that again because the client is also installed along with the installation of the database.
Okay.
Yes, Ramji.
I want everyone to respond on this and tell me whether you understood this or not.
Yes, Ramji.
Yes, Ramji.
Yes, Ramji.
So I just have to specify the username and password only. I need not specify the IP address, the port number, because the SQL Plus the SQL Plus client is installed along with the Oracle database server installation.
Okay.
If you use
Okay,
a
Ramji.
SQL developer, if you use a SQL developer instead of SQL Plus, then you have to specify the IP address and port number because SQL developer is installed separately. It doesn't know where the database is present, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Will everyone agree to that?
Yes.
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 So right now I'm not talking about the SQL developer, I'm talking about the SQL Plus. So this particular client already knows the IP address of the server and the port number of the server. You need not specify that. You just have to specify the username and password, and you have to remember the username and password what you have given as part of the installation. Okay?
Yes, Ramji.
Okay.
So by evening, I am expecting everyone to install the database in your laptops. So, and I want everyone to use the SQL Plus to connect to the database. So,
Okay.
right now, when I enter the right username and password, now it connected to Oracle database. Agreed?
Agree.
Now connection is created. Yesterday I told you creating a connection means what? Now client can talk to database server after the connection is established, after the connectivity is established between the client and server. So it clearly saying that connected to Oracle database, correct?
Yes, Ramji.
When you enter the username and password, it connected to Oracle database. Now client can begin the communication with the server. Client can begin the communication with the server through that connection, through that pipe. I told that pipe kind of thing will be established, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I did, let me close it once again. Exit. Let me open the SQL Plus. Just double click on this. Sorry, only single click. So now username, enter the username, enter the password. Okay. So then it connected to Oracle database. Correct? Now client and server connectivity is established. Now through this connection, you have to talk to the database from the client. This is the client. Whatever you're looking on the screen, that is a client, correct? That is a SQL plus client.
Yes,
Okay.
Ramji.
Whatever you're looking on the screen is a client. Will everyone agree, Mehraj?
Yes.
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 So through this client, you're talking to the database. So you already created a connection to the database. Connection is already established. Connection is already established. Correct? Connected to whenever you see this prompt, the SQL prompt. When you see the SQL prompt, it means the connectivity is established between the client and server.
Yeah.
Now I have to send a query to the database server from the client, because if client wants to speak with the server understands only query language. It doesn't understand any other language, correct?
Yes, Ramji.
Yes.
Yeah.
So but you don't know the query language, so you have to learn the query language. So every language will have its own syntax. Every language will have its own syntax, whether it is English language or Telugu language or Hindi language, whatever might be the language. So every language will have its own grammar. It will have its own syntax, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for example, Java language. Java also has its own syntax. Whatever you write in Java, you have to write inside a class. You have to declare class in lowercase and give the name of the class, open the flower bracket and close the flower bracket. So this is how you write a class. That is the syntax, correct?
Yeah.
So every language will have its own syntax. You have to follow the syntax. You have to follow the grammar. So similarly, this query language also has its own grammar and own syntax, correct? You have to learn the syntax of that query language. If you don't learn the query language, you cannot talk to database, because database understands only query language. So if
Okay.
client wants to communicate with the server, if client wants to communicate with the Oracle database server, so the client has to send a query to database. So you have to write a query. If this is a client, right? You have to write a query here. So maybe the query that I write is create create user create user. Okay. So December 2019. One second. Okay. Sorry. So create username. Give the username. What username you want to create? Create username identified by. So this particular username is identified by what password? You have to give the same. You can give any password. That's your wish. I'm giving the same password. You can give whatever the password you want to give. So this is the username and this is the password. I'm creating a new user. So if you want to connect to the database, you can connect with this particular user and password also. Okay.
Okay, Ramji.
I am asking from the client. The client is sending a query to the database. It is sending a query to the database. Hey database, please create the user with this username and with this password. This is the username and this is the password. You are sending this particular query to the database server from the client. Now server will receive that query. Server will understand the query because server understands the query language. the database server understands the query language. It understands the query, so it understands that, oh, he's asking me to create a user with this username and with this password. He will understand, the server will understand that, and it will create a user with that username and password. So one user will be created in the database, because the client send a query to database, please create a user. So database will create a user and keep it inside the database, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So give the semicolon. Each and every SQL query, each and every query has to be terminated with a semicolon. So the user created. So when you send a query to database, because the connectivity is established, correct? The connectivity is established. Yesterday, as I told, so this is the client and this is the server. And when client wants to talk to the server, it has to create a connection first. It has to create a pipe in between, correct?
Yes.
So the connectivity is already established. If you look here, when you enter username and when here it is clearly saying that connected to Oracle database, correct? Client
Yes,
connected to the
Ramji.
server. Agreed?
Yes.
So now through this connection, you are sending a query to database. You are sending a query to database because database understands only query language. What query you are sending? You are asking database, hey, please create the user with this username and with this password. So then database understands that query language. It created a user inside. It created a user and kept it inside the database. Okay.
Okay.
So now user. So when you ask the database to create a user, database created the user and send the response back to the client. User created. The database send the response back to client. A user created. Getting it?
Yeah.
So now let me exit it. What I'll do is I'll again log open SQL Plus and I'll enter what username? December 2019, correct?
Mm.
Password is December 2019. Now it's saying that it's not saying that invalid username and password. For example, if I give December 2019 and if I give password as Ramji, then it will say invalid username and password, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Here enter the December 2019. I gave the right password December 2019, but it's saying that error. What is the error? It's saying that this particular user lacks permissions, lacks privileges. This particular user does not have a privilege to log in. This particular user does not have a privilege to log in. Getting it?
Yes, Ramji.
Yeah.
When you create a user, you have to grant some privileges to the user. You have to grant some privileges to the user so that the user can perform all the operations. So what I'll do is I'll log in with August 2019, which is already privileged user. He is a privileged user, correct?
Yes.
Now it is connected to database. Now what I'll do is grant. I'm sending one more query. I'm sending one more query to database from the client. From the client, I'm sending a query to database server. Grant DBA to which user? December 2019 user.
2019.
So I'm asking grant DBA privileges. DBA means the database administrator privileges to the this particular user. I'm making this particular user as a DBA user.
Yes, Ramji.
So now when I send a query to the database from the client, when I send a query to the database from the client, database understands that query and it granted the privileges to the user. Correct? So now if I exit and if I open SQL Plus again, now I can log in with December 2019 and December 2019. Now I'm able to connect to the database because he has all the privileges. That user has all the privileges. Any questions?
No, Ramji.
No.
So when I enter the username and when I enter the password, I'm sending a request to the database for creating a connection. First of all, I have to create a connection, correct? I have to create a connection. The client has to know where the server is present. It has to know on what port number it is running. So the client already knows where the server is present and on what port number it is running. So now it is sending a request to the client. Sorry, it is sending a request to the server to open the door. When you go to your friend home, so you know the address of your friend, you know the apartment number. You go there and you have to open the door and enter inside the home. Correct? If you want
Yes,
to enter
Ramji.
inside the home, you have to enter the username and password on the door. Correct?
Yes.
So if you enter a wrong username and password, so the server doesn't allow you to get in. Correct?
Yes, Ramji.
So you're trying to send a request to this particular server to get into the server, correct? To connect to the server, to communicate with the server. So you have to send the right username and password to the server. Then server will authenticate that username and password because it is already stored inside the user is already stored inside the database. Whatever the users you are creating, all the users are stored inside the database, correct?
Yes.
So it will check if this is a right user and password or not because it already has that information. Whatever the username and password you're sending, it will check if it is a right username and password. If it is a right username and password, so then the connectivity will be established and you can send queries. You can send queries through the connection. Any questions?
No, Ramji.
No.
So I hope everyone understood how to connect to database from a SQL Plus client. So how did you get the SQL Plus client in your laptops? It will be automatically
Automatically.
installed. It will be automatically installed when you install the Oracle database. So now using that client, I'm connecting to the server. Using that client and connecting to the server. So after connecting to the server, I told you about two queries: how to create a user and how to grant the DBA privileges to the user. Grant DBA to that particular username. That is the query. That is the language. That is the syntax. You have to follow that syntax. Correct?
Yes, Ramji.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you specify instead of saying grant DBA to December 2019, instead of saying that, if you say DBA grant to December 2019, will it understand that?
No.
You won't understand because if you have to speak in such a way that database understands that. Database understands only query language. So you have to send the query properly. Every language has its own syntax. You have to follow the syntax and send the query. Then only it will understand. In case if I speak like this, database class yesterday, how many yesterday, if I speak like this, will you understand anything? If I jumble the words, will you understand? If you don't follow the grammar, if I don't follow the syntax for the English language, you understand what I'm speaking?
Not exactly.
If I'm jumbling the words like this, dislike jumbling words, understand you? Will you understand like this?
No.
You don't understand if I jumble the words, right? You don't understand what I'm speaking, agreed?
Agree.
Yes.
Similarly, the database also don't understand if you don't send the query properly. You should not jumble the words. You should say grant DBA to December 2019. That is the syntax. Then only database understands that syntax, correct?
Yes, Ramji.
Yes.
So this is how you have to create a user and this is how you have to grant the DBA privileges to the user. So once you grant the DBA privileges to the user, you can log in with that particular username and password. I enter the December 2019 and password I enter the December 2019. I'm connected to Oracle database. Great.
Yeah. Agree.
Yes.
Now I can send any queries to the database again. Correct.
Yes.
So what are the things we do in database? Yesterday I told you that we will store some data in the database. Great. And we will get the data from the database. Whatever the data we stored, we'll get the data. We'll store the data first. So afterwards, if you want, you can get the data. Correct?
Yes.
So how do you store the data in the database? So that is what we have to learn now. So how do you store the data in the database? One second. Okay, no problem. So how do you store the data in the database? So that's what our next topic. So in database, the data is stored inside the tables. The data is stored inside the tables.
Okay.
These tables are called relational tables. In every RDBMS, yesterday I told you what is RDBMS. In every relational database management system, so Oracle is a RDBMS. What kind of database management system is Oracle? It's a relational database management system, correct?
Yes.
So Oracle is a RDBMS, DB2 is a RDBMS. So all these things are RDBMS. So in every RDBMS, the data is stored in the relational tables. The data is stored in the relational tables. The data is stored in the tables. That is how the data is stored inside the database. So tables means listen carefully. So this is a table, correct?
Yes, Ramji.
This is a table. This is how the data will see. For example, the product ID, product name, product quality, and product quantity. So if you want to store the product information, you can store like this in the database. In database, you have to create a table first. You have to create a table, and the table contains 4 rows. It contains 4 rows and it contains 4 columns. This is the first column, this is the second column, this is the third column, this is the fourth column. And rows, this is the first row, this is the second row, this is the third row, this is the fourth row. There are total 4 rows and 4 columns in the table. In this particular example, the table is created with 4 rows and 4 columns, and the data is stored inside the table, correct?
Yeah.
I want everyone to respond here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, Ramji.
Divya,
Yes, Ramji.
Maharaj,
Yes, Ramji.
Kathy. Kathy, are you there? See, I want everyone to focus here. I told you yesterday itself. All these classes are important. I can't tolerate this if you don't respond to me. So I'm storing some data in the table. This is how I'm storing the data. If I want to store the product information, the first product information, the second product information, the third product information, this is how I have to store the data. If I have to store the data, first of all, I have to create a table in the database. The database should have a table first. In the table, I can store the data. Agreed?
Yes, Ramji.
Yes, Ramji.
So
Yeah.
let me create a table. So how to create a table? I have to send a query. I have to ask database, database, please create the table. Otherwise, if you don't ask the database will not create the table. So how do you ask the database? By writing a query, because database understands only query language. So from the client, so this is the client, the SQL Plus is a client. From this client, you have to send a query. Create table. This is the syntax for the query. You have to learn this syntax. So create table. I will create a table called employee. I'll create a table called employee. The table name is employee. So I'm asking the database. I'm not creating. I'm asking the database to create the table. So I'm just sending a query to database from the client. Client is sending a query to server. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So create table employee. Okay. So here you can give the name, because in this table, in the earlier example, So there are 4 columns, right? The first column name is product ID, the second column name is product name, the third column is product quality, and fourth column is product quantity. So similarly, whatever the table I'm going to create, I have to tell what are the column names in the table. So I will tell EMP ID, employee ID is the first column. So, comma, employee name is the second column, okay, and salary is the third column. So I have to give the name of the columns. So I have to ask the database, please create the table with this name, with these columns, with these 3 columns. That is what I am asking the database. Now database understands the query. It will create a table and give the response back. Table is created. Getting it?
Yes.
So one more thing
Yeah.
you have to specify here is, so when you're creating a table, you're asking the database to create this particular column, employee ID column. So for example, in the product ID column, what you're storing? You're storing the numbers, right? The 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
In the product name, are you storing the numbers or strings?
String.
String.
You're storing a string in the product name. So what type of data you're storing in that column? You're storing the string data in that column. You're storing the integer data in this particular column, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So you have to tell the database what type of data you're storing in that column. You have to tell the database. So then database will create the table accordingly. So you have to tell that this particular column can store number data. Number, okay?
Okay.
This particular column can store number data. You have to specify the data type of the column. What type of data you can store in the column.
Okay.
So in case of Java, you have an integer data type, you have a string data type, you have a Boolean data type. You have so many data types in Java, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
Ram.
Yeah.
Similarly, in database also there are so many data types. So there is no data type called integer in database, in Oracle database. So Oracle database has a data type called number. There is no integer. There is a number. Instead of integer, there is a number data type. Getting it?
Yes.
So you have to specify that this particular column can store only numbers. Then database will create a table accordingly. It will create a column accordingly, and it will allow only numbers in that column. It will not allow any other things in that column.
Okay.
Okay.
So comma EMP name. This is the second column. So what data you will store in this column? Generally, you will store the string, right? You don't
String.
store
Yes.
Yes.
right? Agreed?
Yes.
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 So in database, there is no string data type. So there is a data type called varchar2.
Yes.
So this is the data type. This is just similar to string. In Java, there is a string data type. In database, there is a varchar2. Char means characters, correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
var means variable. Number of characters. You can have multiple characters. That's what you mean. So varchar2. So this is the data type of this column. So comma salary. Salary is number, right? Generally.
Yes.
Yes.
So salary is number. So that's all. Open the parenthesis here, close the parenthesis here. Okay, so you're sending a query, you're sending this query to database server from the client. Client is sending a query to server, and server understands the query. It understands that, oh, client is asking me to create a table. So it will create a table with these columns and with this data type of these columns. So something is wrong here. Create table employee missing left parenthesis. So because here when you specify EMP ID number, I'll tell you what is this. Don't worry. EMP name varchar2 of 8, comma salary number of 5. So now table created. So I told that you have to specify the name of the column. You have to specify the data type. You have to specify the name of the column. You have to specify the data type, name of the column and data type. So, but I'll talk about what is this 6 and 8 and 5 later. Okay.
Yes, Ramji.
Okay.
So this is how you created the table. Any questions here?
No.
Except
No.
No.
So now I'm asking the database, a database, please create the table. So database created the table and gave me the response, table created. So where it created the table, it created the table inside the database. You're asking the database to create the table. It created the table inside the database. The table is created inside the database. Client is asking the database, create the table. Database created the table and the table is present inside the database. Correct?
Yes, Ramji.
Yes.
Now I should ask database to store some data in the table. Why did I create the table first? To store some data. Because I told that the data is stored inside the tables in the database. The data is stored inside the tables. Data is stored inside the relational tables, correct?
Yes.
That's what I
Yeah.
told you.
Yeah.
Okay. So I told that the data is stored inside the relational tables and I created the table just now. Now I want to store the data in the table. How do I store the data in the table? So I have to write a query again. I have to ask the database, please store this data in the table. So this is the query. Insert, because I'm inserting some data in the table. So insert into which table? I want to insert the data in the employee table, correct? Insert
Yes.
into employee table is already there in the database. The table is already created with a name called employee in the database. Now you're asking the database, please insert some data in this table, correct? So
Yes.
insert into employee values. You have to open what values you want to insert into this table. You want to insert some values. What values you want to insert? You want to insert employee ID 100, employee name ABC. Okay. So because I told number data type, right? Employee ID is a number data type. I'm inserting this 100 into this column. Into this column, I'm inserting 100, correct?
Yes.
And in the
Yes.
employee name column, I'm inserting ABC. The var_char2 should always be start with single quote and end with single quote. This is because in Java, string always starts with double quote and ends with double quote, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So in database, the var_char2 field should always start with single quote and end with single quote. So this is the employee name. Now I want to save this. I want to store the salary 1000. Okay, $1,000. This is the salary. This is the data I want to store in this table. So when I send this query to database understands the query. It understands the query and it created one row. This is because I told that one row is created, right? So I told rows and columns. So for example, product ID is 1, product name is wheat. So I'm storing some data, correct?
Yes.
So similarly, now I stored some data in the table. I created one record. I created one row in the table, correct?
Yes.
So this is how I store the data in the table. If I want to store another data, insert into employee values 200, comma, DEF, comma, salary is 3000. So I created one more row, correct?
Yeah.
So how many employees are there in the employee table now? Huh?
2.
2.
Employees in the employee table. The first employee ID is 100. The first employee ID is 100. His name is ABC. His salary is 1000. The second employee ID is 200. His name is DEF and his salary is 3000.
3000.
So you can create any number of employees in the table, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I have some work now. That's the reason I started early. What I want everyone to do now is please install the Oracle database. Okay, and try
Okay.
to connect to the database by using the SQL Plus client and create a user and grant the permissions to the user, then log in with that user and create a table and store the data in the table. This is what I'm expecting from everyone to complete by evening.
Yeah.
Okay, Ramji.
So, and Aksha, please send the recording to everyone again.
Okay, Ramji.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Ramji.